So, what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to discuss the pros and cons of the iPhone 13 in 2024. So, the iPhone 13 has been making waves since its release in 2021, and we're going to begin by talking about the pros of this phone. So pro number one begins with the battery life. So the battery life on this phone has always been somewhat of a really nice experience. And even when the health gets to around 90, it still operates pretty good. As you get down to like 85, 83, it gets much worse. But this device right here has always been one of those phones that you can just count on all day in the area of battery life. It's been really strong, and it's definitely going on my pros list as number one. The iPhone 15 is slightly better with a slightly larger phone size battery, but in the same size screen. But overall, this has been a true pro to this phone. Really good battery life. The next one is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people still even consider this phone, and that it's this class-leading performance with the Apple A15 Bionic chip. Clocked in at 3.23 gigahertz. One of the cons though, and by the way, my screen protector is cracked if you're wondering, what is that spider web right there? It's a screen protector. It's not the actual screen. You know, those tempered glasses be cracking. Don't play with me. You'll see right there, 4 gigabytes of RAM. The 4 gigabytes of RAM is definitely no 6 gigs. This phone can actually close an app here and there and relaunch an app here and there. It does happen on the iPhone 13, and I didn't mention it in my last video, but it's definitely something that happens for Apple's iPhone 13. So if you're looking for the most RAM, this is not the best device, but pros wise, it still has class leading performance day to day, and you're not going to be really upset with how it launches apps, and the performance day to day actually matches up to something. I just missed that tap. It matches up to something, you know, like currently. So it's really held its own, and it proves what we talked about years before, that these phones can last and last and last. And there's a good reason why this phone is still for sale. Although I think when the 16s launch, this might get dropped from the lineup. Pro number 3 has to be the cameras. The cameras on this phone have always been really good. They definitely have dual 12 megapixels, so you're not getting the 48 that you're going to find on some of the other models. And there's my PS5 right there. You're not going to get the 48 that you'll find on others, but at least you can go 5 times zoom, and you can go the ultra wide as well. You still have really good video capable of 4K 60. You also have a cinematic mode, and you have slow-mo and everything. It's a very simple camera with really no issues. In addition, on the front-facing camera, this is also a really good touch as well. 12 megapixel on the front, 4K 60, really does a good job. So yeah, very good. Also pretty good video on the front as well. So iPhone 13 is a really, really nice camera setup here on the front and the rear. Let's go ahead and take a look at some samples. So you can see right here, really good detail here, especially on a nice sunny day like this. And you'll just see excellent. I mean, we don't really need much more detail than this, do we? I mean, let me know what you think down below, but look at the clouds, how it picks up the clouds in the rear. As you zoom in, you'll see that the quality definitely falls off a little bit there. You can't really get incredibly sharp detail once you start zooming in. But for the general pictures that most people need, this does a swell job. It does a really fantastic job that most people are not going to be having an issue with. It also takes pretty excellent pictures of pets, as you can see right here. Very nice. I mean, the detail is pretty good, and it does a good job with people as well. As you can see, skin tones are pretty good. Overall, not bad. You can see very nice detail, and even though it's picking me and her up, you can see around here, the detail along the edges and along the other stuff also is pretty good. Continuing that theme, here is some clouds, as you can see right here. Very nice. And it just continues to offer incredible results. So, I mean, what more do you need? Even though there is really great enhancements to the newer phones, I don't think it's really gotten way better since then. But again, if you are more into the pro photography and you want to really step it up, the 15 is the better option, but this is okay for most people. So my next pro to this phone is the storage. You cannot really get bad storage on here because it starts at 128 gigs. That's just something I wanted to mention. Really decent storage options and capable of all the way up to 512 gigs. So even though there's no expandable memory on any iPhones really, At least you have some pretty high storage options with no 64 gig option available for the 13. The next pro is that the display quality is not that much different. It does have a notch, but the actual display quality is not that much different. It gets plenty bright at 800 nits. It's still OLED. And while it does have a notch, the resolution is still 460 ppi, only 1 pixel per inch different than the 15. While the bezels are a little bit thicker than the newer phones, it's not really a deterrent. This phone still has a really nice display. Although not 120 hertz, most people buying this one probably aren't in the market for 120 hertz. If they were, they wouldn't even look at this phone. So I think the display is actually still very good for this phone right here, even though it came out a few years ago. Another pro to the iPhone 13 is the software still has plenty of life left. At 17.4.1, we still have at least a couple updates. Some were asking, is it going to get AI? And I do think it will, but I don't think it's going to get all of the AI features. I think some of them are going to be reserved for the iPhone 16, but that's going to be the same case, I think, for the iPhone 14 as well. That probably won't get everything either. And my last pro is that for this price point, cheaper now, you're still getting most of the relevant specs that you want on an iPhone. Good cameras, 4K 60, nice OLED display, nice size display, really good battery life. It seems to have most of the relevant things you need on an iPhone, even though it's not the 2024 iPhone or 2023 iPhone. So just something to note right there. Let's talk about the cons. The design is starting to get dated. The notch was on the phone since the iPhone 10. The design is still iPhone 12 like with the sharper edges. With the 15 getting some refinements, it definitely feels smoother and nicer than this phone. While this phone is not outdated, it is starting to show its age a little bit, and I just think it's a con because it's got minimal design refreshes compared to potentially what's upcoming with the iPhone 16. In addition, a lot of other phones in the market just seem to surpass this phone in the looks department anyway, but you might be disappointed if you're looking for something, radically different from your current iPhone 11 or 12. This is not really that much different, but if you are looking at other phones on the market, you might say, those phones look a little nicer, but at the same time, they don't run the Apple software, which is something you might be interested in if you're looking for the iPhone 13. The next one is no 120 hertz. I cannot make this video without talking about that. The good news is that when you turn on low power mode, it doesn't really change anything. As with a 120 hertz ProMotion iPhone, it will change things simply because low power mode turns off ProMotion. However, not having ProMotion on here, I think you get used to it and don't care after a little while. It really just depends on how you're using your iPhone day to day. If you're using your iPhone to be a device that you really want to spend a lot of time on with media and scrolling and a lot of usage, I do think you'll prefer a ProMotion, but definitely has to go on my cons list for this phone because 120 hertz should have been available, I think, for the past couple of years already on iPhones, and it still hasn't made it to the base model. So a little bit annoying, but it's definitely a con of this phone. The next con of this phone is the lightning port and slower charging. I mean, if you're going to be using a phone in 2024, most things are going USB-C, and this one right here has lightning. So by default, if you purchase this now, you're buying an outdated cable with lightning. When I say outdated, I don't mean that there's not still accessories available. I mean that the way the future is going is USB-C, which is why all the iPhones have it. So by default, you're buying something that's not going to be around in 5-6 years, maybe even 3 or 4. So except for, vintage iPhones, once these become vintage, this is going to be outdated, but USB-C is going to remain the standard. But the next reason is that you also have slower charging here. This is one of the slowest charging phones in this category comparatively to other Android competitors. So pretty slow charging and an outdated cable. The next con is no dynamic island. Now, I know some people are going to disagree, but once you start using the dynamic island features, it's not like they're life-changing, but they are useful and they're pretty cool to use, especially considering that if you have a notch, at least do something with it. So I started to enjoy dynamic island. From a visual perspective, I still think dynamic island is more obtrusive. It looks more distracting. But once you get used to it, the notch just is there and just houses Face ID. So while it does seem to blend into the background, I do think not having the latest dynamic island features, especially as software developers are starting to add a lot of applications that work with that, it seems like a con to me. The next con to this phone is the camera features when it comes to zoom is seriously lacking and no action video. That could be not a deal breaker, but the lack of zoom is really atrocious on here. 5 times is terrible. There are budget phones that can do 10, 15, 20 times zoom. This phone at 5x is one of the worst zooms on a camera on the market today. It really just seems like you have just a basic camera that can do a regular shot and an ultra wide, and the 5 times zoom is just there to give you something, but it really isn't that useful. I really wish this phone had more zoom, and they already brought that to the iPhone 15. So go to the iPhone 15 if you want more zoom for sure. My next con of the iPhone 13 is the resale value. It's dipping. This phone you can already pick it up for around 300 bucks or so, maybe closer to 4, but you're not going to be able to sell this for much. If you buy this now and you have plans to use this for a year or two, think about the future when you're trying to sell this phone. You're going to get nothing for this phone because it's already going on 3 years old already. So while a lot of people say it's still a great phone, it's still the best for the price. Yeah, buy it now though, and you're not going to be able to sell it for anything when you want to trade in for a newer phone because it's going to be super aged if you keep it 2 years, and it's going to be worth essentially nothing. So keep that in mind when you are saying this is one of the best used options. It truly is, but only if you don't plan to purchase your next phone in full. So definitely keep that in mind. Lastly, I do think the outdoor brightness is definitely lacking on this phone. This one's much harder to see in sunlight than something like the iPhone 15. It also tends to auto dim itself a little bit more often. When I'm outdoors, the brightness doesn't stay super high for a super long time. So that's something I noticed as well. And the last con of the iPhone 13 is that certain AI features are not going to be available. I should have mentioned the SIM card as a pro in my pro section because having a SIM card somewhat is a pro. I think as we get used to using eSIM, which is seemingly taking forever, it won't be anymore. But I really don't like how, Apple's basically the only one forcing eSIM upon people. I really love how almost no other phones are forcing this on you. So having the SIM card on the iPhone 13 was the last series to have this is a really big pro. And so there you have it. The iPhone 13 is a solid choice if you want strong performance and a great camera. Like really is strong in that department. But if you're after the latest design and technology, no, definitely not. This is not going to be your favorite here with the iPhone 13. So if you found this video helpful, entertaining, informing, do me a favor, click the like button for me. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this as I plan many more videos coming later this year. Also, any questions, comments, concerns about Apple's iPhone 13, you plan to buy one, you have questions, or maybe even you have questions about the Pro Max, something like that, drop it down below in the comments. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well and peace.